In this demo, we'll use Cloud Data Lab notebooks to quickly run Python scripts to extract topics from the sample HR manual, then push them into a data store entity using the Cloud Data Store API. We also leverage Google Natural Language API to generate synonyms for the HR topics. Finally, we use the Dialogflow API to populate entities into Dialogflow. The first thing we need to do is enable some APIs for the lab, so we can go to the APIs and Services dashboard. The first one I will check for is the Dialogflow API, so we can search for Dialogflow and enable it. The other APIs that we need to make sure are enabled are Cloud Storage, Cloud Source Repositories, and Cloud Natural Language API. So we can check that those are enabled. Cloud Storage is already enabled. Next, we can search for Source Repositories, which is also already enabled. And then lastly, we can look for the Natural Language API, which is also already enabled. So all of our APIs are enabled. The next thing we can do is initialize App Engine, which will also initialize Data Store. So we can go to the App Engine dashboard, and since we haven't deployed an app yet, it will show an option to deploy your first app. So we can select a language, and we will go with Python. We need to choose a region to serve our app, so I will stick with the default, which is US Central. It takes a moment for the App Engine backend services to be prepared. Now that we see the prompt for the tutorial, we know that App Engine has been initialized, and we don't need to go through the tutorial, so we can just click Cancel Tutorial. And since App Engine was initialized, it automatically initialized Data Store with it. So we know that that will be ready to use as well. The next piece that we need to do is create a Cloud Data Lab instance. So when we go to Compute Engine, we see that right now there are no VM instances. So we will need to create one that will serve as the Data Lab instance. So I went to Cloud Shell, and I can click Start Cloud Shell. The first thing I will do is make sure that my environment variable for Google Cloud Project is set correctly. And we need to set a zone for our Data Lab instance. So since I'm in the central region, I need to make sure it's a zone in that region, so I can choose Zone F. Any zone in US Central 1 will be fine. And now we need to actually create the Data Lab instance. So we can run Data Lab, create Data Lab instance, and this will take probably about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. Okay, so now that Data Lab is up and running, we can look at it in web preview mode from Cloud Shell. So we need to make sure that the port is set to port 8081, which is the port that Data Lab runs on. So we can click preview, and it will open in a new tab. So right now we don't have anything in our Data Lab notebook, so we're going to clone some already written notebooks from a cloud storage bucket. So I'll create a new notebook, and I'm just going to paste in a gsutil command to copy from the cloud storage bucket. And we'll hit run. And that should have copied all of our notebooks from the bucket. So if we go back to the Data Lab tab, now we see that we have a lot of new Python notebooks in our Data Lab root directory. So the first thing we can do is look at our sample HR manual, which is a text file. So this is what we'll be using to populate our Dialogflow agent. So we can look at the way that it's laid out. If we scroll down to where the keywords are, we can see that the format is a keyword on one line and then the definition of that keyword on the line after. So this is how our notebook code will work to parse out these keywords and definitions. So we can close out of the manual. And the first notebook that we need to run is the process handbook notebook. So this is what will actually extract the keywords and definitions from that HR manual text file. So we can click process handbook. Okay, so the first thing we can do is run the process handbook notebook. So we need to make sure that all of the cells are cleared so that they are fresh, and we're going to execute each cell one by one. So we can click run, and the way that we know that a cell is finished executing is when the blue border shows up to the left of the cell. We're going to import data store and create a data store client. And then this is our code that will actually parse through the HR manual text file. So we can run that. And while it's running, we can see that it's getting the keyword entities and the definitions. And then we can check in data store. So we can go back to the GCP console and go to data store and entities. And we should see, which we do, we see all of those topic entities, which are created under topic. And this is their action text, which is their definition, and it's actually automatically encrypted in data store. So you won't be able to see the definition from here, but that's the encrypted text. So that notebook ran successfully. The next thing we can do is really similar. We're going to run the process synonyms notebook, which does the same thing, but just generates synonyms for all of those keywords that we put into data store. So we'll do clear all cells, and we'll execute each cell one by one. So we're going to get the list of data store entities that are under topic that we already have in data store. And then we're going to generate the synonyms for those entities. And we can see as this cell runs, it's generating synonyms for each of the keywords in the topic entity. Now that's done. So the next piece will actually push those synonyms into data store as a new entity called synonym. So now that that's done, we can check and make sure that the synonyms showed up in data store. So we might have to refresh the whole browser to be able to see the new entity added. So now we can check data store and we see that synonym also got added. So these are our synonyms for all of the keywords from the HR manual that are stored as topic entities. The next part we need to do is actually create our Dialogflow agent. So we can open a new tab and go to dialogflow.com. And we're going to click Go to Console, sign in with Google, and it should be the account that you're already logged in with. And we'll allow Dialogflow. We don't care about emails, and we can agree to the terms of service. So now we can create our Dialogflow agent. So we can go to the console on the left side and click Create Agent. I'll name my agent HR Chatbot. And under Google Project, we need to make sure that we import the GCP project that we've already been using for our Data Lab notebooks and App Engine. And then we'll click Create. So right now we just created our agent, but it doesn't have any intents or entities in it yet. So the first thing we'll do is create an entity. So I'm going to hit Create Entity, and I'll call it Topic. We want to uncheck Define Synonyms because our webhook is going to handle synonyms instead, but we will check Allow Automated Expansion. And then just to be able to save this entity, we'll just enter a value of test to start with, and then we'll save it. So the next thing we'll do is go back to our Data Lab notebooks, and we're going to run the Dialogflow notebook. So we'll do clear all cells. For this notebook, we actually have to execute the first cell, and then we'll need to restart Python on the notebook server. So I'll let this cell finish. And then we'll click the drop-down next to reset, interrupt execution, and then we'll do reset and restart. So now that we've restarted, we don't need to go back and rerun the first cell. So we can just pick back up with the next cell, and we'll run these one by one. So this notebook should have taken our entities from Datastore and populated our Dialogflow agent with them. So we'll go back to the Dialogflow console. Let me go back to Entities and click Topic. And all of our keywords from Datastore are now in our topic entity in the Dialogflow console. So now that we have our topic entity, we can create an intent in our agent. So I'll click Create Intent. And my intent name will also be topic. And I'm going to scroll down here to Actions and Parameters and click Add. And we're going to add a lookup action. So this is what will actually pass the topic parameter to our webhook and be able to retrieve information for each topic. So the parameter name will just be topic. The entity needs to be @topic, which is our Dialogflow entity. And then the value can be $topic. Then we'll scroll down and go to fulfillment and expand this section. And we need to click Enable Fulfillment, and we're going to enable webhook call for this intent. And now we can save. We'll wait for it to save. And then next we can add training phrases. So we'll add about 10 or so training phrases just to give our agent plenty of examples. So I'm going to say, I'd like to know about discipline. And discipline is one of the keywords from the HR manual. And then I can highlight the word discipline and click this first option that pops up, which is @topic. So that knows to grab the topic entity in this training phrase. So that's our first example. We can add a few more and do the same thing, highlighting the keyword. And we don't have to only use the discipline keyword. It can take any of the keywords that will fit in this training phrase. So that should be a good number of examples to start with, and now we can save those training phrases. And you'll see that Dialogflow gives a message saying agent training started. So that means it's taking the time to take these training phrases that we just entered and use the underlying machine learning algorithm that is created for your agent to be able to take those training phrases and expand on them and use them for user input.